Welcome back, Inside Fever Insider, back sooner than expected with everything that happened last night in Phoenix. I'm Brian Haenchen, reporting live from Indianapolis. Chloe Peterson checking in from Phoenix. And Chloe, it was a really bad night for a variety of reasons in Phoenix last night for the Fever, huh?
Yeah, it was just a bad game, and then they had two major injuries, and then Natasha Howard got hit in the head at one point, left the game, didn't return. She seemed fine. Sophie Cunningham had a left ankle injury, which is separate from the right ankle that she injured earlier in the season, but then she also returned to the game, so they're not that big of a deal. But there were two seemingly at least somewhat major injuries last night.
Those two major injuries, of course, Sydney Colson goes down with a left knee injury in the first quarter. Don't want to speculate, but watching the video, it was a non-contact injury. Looked like the knee buckled. And then in the fourth quarter, the team's other healthy point guard, Aari McDonald, goes down with a right foot injury. Somebody tweeted Chloe's tweet, a reporter who was there with covering the game in Phoenix, and he reported that Aari McDonald was seen a boot after the game. Coach Stephanie White afterwards said that both players will be evaluated later today. That's Friday as we're recording this. And yeah, Chloe, let's just start there with the injuries and the inability for this group to catch a break. I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, obviously, the Sydney Colson one was pretty bad, and I'm sure the fear for the Fever and for everybody else is, a potential ACL tear, just kind of just how it looked with the non-contact injury, her knee buckling inward. That kind of is how an ACL tear looks, but obviously we don't want to speculate on what it is because the Fever haven't said anything either. I'm sure, Sydney Colson will get more testing coming into Indianapolis. They took a red eye back to Indy after the game last night. So she'll be getting more testing this morning, and then hopefully we'll hear something today or tomorrow. At the very least, they'll release a game report for their game that they have tomorrow at home because the grind never stops. And that'll come at about 5 Eastern time. So we'll know more at the very least by then. And then with Aari McDonald too, I didn't see her in a boot post game, but I also didn't see her at all after the game. So she looked to be limping pretty significantly when she left the court in the fourth quarter, which I believe was with 6 minutes left, and she didn't return. And that obviously leaves Indiana without any healthy point guards because Caitlin Clark has been out since July 16th with that right groin injury, and then she doesn't have a timetable for return. She hasn't started practicing with the team yet, so, depending on the severity of Colson, McDonald, and then Clark kind of not being on an immediate track to return right now, they're going to have to figure something out at point guard.
Brendan Clean, by the way, was the reporter who posted about McDonald being in a boot. He said she's in a boot on her right foot and was on crutches post game. So do with that what you will. Chloe, gut reaction. I think it's by no means a stretch to say Colson probably won't play tomorrow. What's your gut say on McDonald?
My gut says probably not. I wouldn't be surprised with anything between questionable to out for McDonald. I guess I'm also wondering if Natasha Howard will be on the injury report as well because, she was hit in the head in the third quarter. She came out of the game, got checked out by a trainer on the bench, and she stayed on the bench, but she never came back into the game, which that could be just out of precaution because they were losing by 30 points by then, or it could be something more, but I guess we'll see with that one as well.
In terms of hardship waivers and contracts and all that, before we get into the options, I'll let you quickly just give an overview for people who are not familiar with how the hardship contract and that process works for WNBA teams.
Yeah, there are actually two types of hardship. The one that if Colson and McDonald are out for a significant amount of time, they contract, which basically means they are eligible to sign any player to go over the cap and to go over the 12 rostered players to sign another player, which would obviously likely be a point guard. And they are eligible to have that hardship player up until they get 10 available players back from their original roster. So, if Clark, Colson, and McDonald are all out and they're down to 9, they can sign one player until, either Clark or McDonald or Colson come back and bring them back up to 10. They also have a regular hardship option, which the Fever could be eligible for eventually. I'm not as versed as the specifics on that one, but it has to do with when you have 2 players out for a significant amount of time. So it'd be, Caitlin's already been out for 3 weeks now, and say, Sydney Colson is going to be out for a significant amount of time as well. They can sign hardship players that are kind of tied to the player that's returning. So it's kind of hard to explain. You look kind of confused, but
it is very fun and convoluted. You lost me after the emergency part.
But you have the regular hardship, which is kind of tied to those players that are hurt. So, with 2 players out, they could apply for a regular hardship, which I believe is the players have to miss 3 games. First off, which obviously Caitlin Clark has already missed 3 games. And then the second player has to miss 2 games or be ruled out for a significant amount of time. And then they can sign hardship players to a regular hardship contract, but that is tied to the player that they're replacing. So whenever Caitlin Clark comes, it has to be released. And then if they sign a player saying this is replacing Sydney Colson, that player has to be released if Sydney Colson comes back. So it gets a little confusing, but basically I think they would sign an emergency hardship player to get them up to at least 10 players for possibly, I don't know if they'd sign someone for Saturday because that's a pretty quick turnaround, but if McDonald and Colson each end up being out for at least a couple games, I could see them signing someone for possibly Tuesday's game against Dallas.
Yeah. So, worst case scenario, just to recap what Chloe said, she cut out there a little bit. It sounds like Saturday they're kind of just stuck in a pickle. If both McDonald and Colson are out, they're just going to have to live with the short roster, no true point guards. It seems like you just plug in Sophie Cunningham, a little bit of Lexi Hall, a little bit of Kelsey Mitchell, hope for the best. But then Tuesday, that'll get a little more time. She got to get everybody in. 7-day contract, basically, just the hardship waiver, and then we'll let Chloe dissect the rest of the complicated stuff in the written word. Let's quickly, Chloe, before we let you go, let's get into some of the potential options. You and I were texting about this throughout the night, and then again this morning. I have a story up here at some point this morning in the Star, but Bree Hall makes sense, right? The former Fever draft pick. Odyssey Sims was another name that you floated out, and the one that grabbed my attention, Serena Sundell, who kind of seems like a low-risk, high-reward option, the kid out of Kansas State, who led the nation in assists last year, was drafted third round, I think, this year, whatever it was. It didn't actually appear in a game. It seems like one where it's kind of a stopgap and then potentially could have her. But what do you make of the options that are out there, and what do you think would be best?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of good, stopgap options, I would say. I mean, if they wait until Tuesday, Grace Berger may be available. She's on her 3rd 7-day contract with Dallas that expires on Tuesday, which obviously Dallas could then opt to sign her to a rest of season contract too. But obviously, Grace Berger has some familiarity with the Fever franchise, but obviously not with this coaching staff or kind of the overhaul that happened in this past offseason. But I think Bree Hall would be an interesting, sign for the Fever because she obviously went through training camp with them. She knows the playbook in going through training camp. And then she also, stayed active. She signed with the Valkyries for a while, got released from the Valkyries. I believe it was kind of back in June that happened off the top of my head. But I think she would be an interesting option. There's also Jalen Sherrod, who was just released from the New York Liberty. There's Zaya Cook, who was part of the Brittany Sykes trade from and she went from Seattle to Washington, and then she was waived from the Mystics. So there are also multiple options who were just on WNBA teams, and they are kind of in game shape per se as well.
And some of those options too, they bring some veteran experience. Aerial Powers, I think you mentioned her. Sorry, I'm looking through my story now because I don't have these committed to memory quite like Chloe does. But some of those names who would bring some experience to the room, which is big. Aerial Powers played in 2 finals. She won a championship in 2019, which is always big. They talked about that a lot before the season. Part of the reason why they signed Dwana Bonner was just to get that veteran leadership. So maybe you go that way. You mentioned Jalen Sherrod, her coach. I mean, everybody that I've seen, they spoke so highly of her in New York, just in terms of the energy she brought. And she has a really cool story, too, of having gone undrafted out of Colorado to becoming a WNBA champion last year. I mean, that's kind of unheard of in this league. And then, some younger options, too, out there. So it is an interesting pool depending on which way they want to go.
Yeah.
All right, Chloe, we'll be back, I guess, tomorrow night after the Chicago game. So like we said, probably a 3 a.m. live because I write slow and Chloe writes like 15,000 things. So it kind of offsets between the two of us. But we'll have that. We'll have full coverage of the Chicago Fever game. Chloe's going to be on top of it. I will be as well on whatever updates come through today. Both Colson and McDonald expect to be evaluated today. And Chloe, right, we're expecting an update of some sort today or tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, there's the status report that comes out at 5 p.m. The day before games. So at the very least, we'll know that. The Fever canceled their practice for today, which I was surprised they even scheduled a practice in the first place because I believe they got back from Indianapolis probably 5 a.m. So, and then they also canceled their shoot-around for tomorrow morning. So we won't see them until tomorrow night in warm-ups before Chicago. So I guess what we will know is based on those status reports or anything the Fever choose to release regarding Colson or McDonald.
Good stuff. Well, Chloe, thanks for doing this. Have a safe flight back, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you guys so much for watching.
All right. Thank you.